just you get to choose. Right? Like here's the scenario. The environment gives us something which can be perceived as negative, can be perceived as not working, can be perceived as problematic. The world's ending. But we get to choose to see it like that, or we get to choose to see it as an opportunity.
So clearly that it's my responsibility now to do that for other people. If I have information and, other people's success is my success and vice versa.
Because you know what? Like, the challenges or the roadblocks are the journey themselves.
There's no big things. It's all little things compounding on top of each other. Here we are for another episode of Truth Seekers. Coach, I got this itch to kick this episode off differently. I don't want to fall back into the same pattern, the same routine. I want to shake it up. So I'm not even going to introduce us today. What do we want to talk about?
Time of the year, I believe, is always very important to reference. And I believe that when this goes out, it'll be very fitting, being it is right at the end of the year, perhaps a couple of days before any New Year's Eve celebrations. So I would like to pose this question in this context of, now we are another year done with putting a exorbitant amount of coaching reps in the books under your belt, serving clients, cranking it up, going through, getting deeper with clients, sharpening the saw, spending time with the team. What are your thoughts on coaching and the importance of coaching and the necessity of having a coach or at least someone or a team of people in your life that allow you to keep going to that next level? Like, where do you sit that way now? If you could draw some context on that, that'd be super powerful.
I just hung up with a client earlier today who, I typically do this at the end of the coaching conversation, is what's the biggest value from our time together? What are you taking away? And her answer was, to be honest, it's just good to talk to another human about this. And, that's what I did. I started laughing. She's like, no, seriously. Like I sit here alone a lot and think about these things, and they're in my head. And I know that we get to a greater place every time that we talk through them. But if I don't do this, it doesn't get out. I don't make that progress. It's just a reminder of how simple the progress is just by having the conversation. Like that's the principle right there. That's a simple secret of the successful. Yeah. Is to bounce things off of other ideas. Now we're doing that in a very magnified version because of what we do, Coach. We have the privilege of working with all these business owners who are already successful in what they're doing, and just the power of bouncing ideas, sharing ideas, being a sounding board, more of that strategic level or that consultative part of coaching is really key and something that we shouldn't just breeze right over.
Yeah. It's something that successful people know. It fits into that simple secrets of the successful, of course, that they know that if they have someone else there that acts as their insurance, that place to go to when they can say the things that are in their head, not because no one else would listen or because they don't want to talk to anyone else, but because it's a defined time. It's arranged. It's time to brush your teeth every night, so you brush your teeth. Mm. And yeah, like could they go and find the skills to go do that for themselves or write that down or speak to someone else? Yeah, but they'd have to go and find that every time, and that would be lead to decision fatigue or something they'd have to go and do, and it wouldn't be something that would be automatic. And so that's what successful people really know. It's like, well, what's this worth to me? Well, it's security, it's the insurance, like it's doing it every time. As a client that we both work with, that it just says, "Look, yeah, man, this has just been so helpful, just to get out." Like, but that's a cheat. That's a hack. It's a cheat sheet that successful people know to do, right? My father, who has a lot of VHS old videos of when me and my brother were growing up, has now at 80 years old decided that he wants to transfer those to DVD. One, I don't know if anyone has a DVD player anymore. It's like, I'll bring them over when he comes over to see us. You can watch them. I don't know if we have a DVD player, but better than VHS. But the point is, I said, look, he said, I'll get round to it. I'll probably try and do it. It's like, just send them off somewhere. Just send them off somewhere for someone that does that for a living, or go see someone to do it. And it's like, yeah, but it costs money. And is that a simple secret of the successful? Absolutely not. It's the other way around, obviously. I guess the antithesis of that, right, is going like, obviously there's a balance to what that is, but it's not, oh, I've got the free spare money, so I'll go send them off. It's, what's it going to cost me if I don't?
Hmm.
What, how, and not just in the actual time of doing it, but the 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 days or hours or months of agonizing over when I'm going to do it. Will I do it? Will I finally get there? And the emotional weight of carrying that. Like, what does that cost? Like, you can't even put a number to that.
Yeah, the taking up of headspace is how I would put it. It's almost like a trash can, and you're jamming more of it in, jamming it in, jamming it in. Instead of emptying it and creating more space for other things to go in there, you're jamming more in, jam more in. And so all of a sudden you have this super compacted, it's way too dense. There's no way to, there's nothing of value in there anymore. Not that there's anything of value if you're emptying the garbage can, but just go with the analogy here. uh,
Well, the
you
value
want
is the empty garbage can, right? Yeah.
right, yeah, but you want to be able to keep your mind clear so that you can access these other this creativity piece of yourself where other solutions come from. You're constantly filling your head and keeping it full of the same concepts. Like, how many of these concepts are like, I've been thinking of this for a while or forever, or it just feels good to get it out. So imagine that every single week we're emptying out a week's worth of stuff. That's why there's maybe a little bit heavier lifting in the beginning with coaching, because there's a lot more stored up there, and you're working through that. Think of a well-oiled cadence that's just going through. You're just emptying out a week's worth of stuff, and I think that's kind of what you're getting at with the insurance, right? Once a week, it's dedicated and delegated to this specific time to talk about these things.
Yeah. And to that point, if ever there's a reason why you can't connect for that week and you miss a week, you notice that. As a coach, you notice that when that client comes back, it's not the same. It requires more. Like, the best thing is to get back to it as soon as possible, but you miss that week on week cadence. You miss some of that growth opportunity. But that's really powerful to acknowledge, and that's not something you would see if you weren't in it all the day. Like, so this is, I guess, whoever's watching, listening to this, thinking about this in your business, in your life, your career, wherever you might be. There's something that it's a gift that we get to share because we see this slice, these tiny little things, this nuance that you can only get by having a ton of reps, a ton of different people, relatively speaking. I think it's really important to be able to share because that, as a single client, you're probably not going to notice as much the week on week. If I skip that week because I'm sick or like on vacation or something, it's going to take much longer to do that. But knowing that we can see it with a different dimension, it's just so more important to show up. That's why, like, I go out of my way to reschedule clients in the week, and that's why I can't work with too many clients, right? Because it's got to be the right clients and the right depth. Something that changed tack slightly has really struck me in the last week. I heard it, read it somewhere, that I've read it before as well, but it's a reminder that I was excited because I was like, oh, cool. It's another indicator that I'm growing because I read the same thing and felt it differently than the first 5 times I read it, which is really about time management. Oh my goodness, time management. It's like, don't want to talk about that. It's almost time management and morning routines talked about a lot. Let's put morning routines to the side, and time management is very, very important. But the distinction I like to make is it's not to think of it in terms of managing the time. It's about thinking of it in terms of managing the energy.
Mm.
And that's what struck me in a different way than I had when I'd taken that in before. As with this particular set of clients I'm thinking about, one client in particular who has enough time and just not using the time well, right? It's because when he has the space, he can't do the things he wants to do in that time because he's just tired from the other stuff he's doing. It might not be that much time he's spending, but it's a huge draw of energy. Huge draw of energy for him. It's the opposite effect of doing one of our TMAC Fitnesses. Chat out to Todd McCullen, a previous guest here. His whole setup is very focused on 20-minute workout in the morning, crush it, get the hell out of there, because he wants to spend 2 hours at the gym when they've got busy lives. And it's the same concept with other way around with time suck. If you're working on something for 20 minutes, but it really takes a ton of energy out of you, so it's only 20 minutes, I'll just get it done. But it's not something that you want to do or should be doing or couldn't delegate, but you do it anyway because it's just 20 minutes. It's going to impact all the most important things that only you can do for the rest of the day. Got to be careful where you're spending time, even if it's a small amount of time. That's the distinction I want to make.
Yeah, and can you get more into the energy management? Because I love that conversation as well. Because I think they're related, right? Time, and energy. But
Yeah.
there's something there. I want to get deeper on that principle.
Yeah. Well, it's so I also can go back to the three gears of energy that I shared as well. That kind of like also tied together, right? So there's the gear number one, which is the execution energy or execution gear, which is just the doing, the regular day to day get shit done, moving forward, doing things you're supposed to do, and you tend to put your foot harder and harder on the accelerator in that execution space. And then like the traditional way of doing that is that you have a vacation and you take a break from the execution gear. So extend the analogy, you're driving along the highway, like faster and faster and faster. After a while, you need to stop because the car needs to refuel, you need to refuel. You rest, and then you get straight back in the car and keep on driving. But you don't give yourself any space for that third gear, which is the reflection gear, which is like, hang on, am I still on the right road? Where am I going? Why am I going there? Is this the right way? Is this the quickest way? And so you need that rest part. You need the second part for sure, but you don't want to get back in the car until you've had at least a little bit of space in that reflection. So if all you're doing is going from foot full to the floor to the rest, you're never going to get any space in the reflection. So it feels like you've got enough space, but all it's just rest time to get back on the horse, get back in the car. And when you're doing that, you never actually be able to take yourself to the place to execute on the things that you do want to do because you're not actually getting to that reflection time. So that looks like knowing I've got to do something in my business, like work on my business, look at my client segmentation, for instance, work with the clients that are most important. But, I'm so overrun with voicemails. I just got to go to bed. I just got to get out of here. That's what that looks like. And so you want to be able to create a space, not just for rest, but after the rest, so you can actually ponder and reflect. And I think what we talked about this before, was like, okay, a good check-in with that would be is if you can go to that reflection space with not much rest in between, and that shows you're not pushing the accelerator down too hard on the execution gear.
Oh, what's the difference between reflection and that like that rest? If we can make some more distinctions with that, is that not the same thing, or what's different about that?
My experience of that in the middle of this year, where I had so much going on, so much opportunity, just saying yes to everything, I realized I was just tired. I was just getting annoyed by things, like overall, like more than would come into my mind before, and with all the practices that we have as well. So I knew I needed to build in some time. So that couple of hours, a couple of times a week. And when it came up, I was like, oh, that's my strategic time. That's my reflection time. That's my working on the business time. But what I found myself doing was sitting on the bed, just laying down, or just like staring, because I just needed the space. I just needed the rest. After doing it for a couple of weeks, I could move from the execution almost directly to the reflection, meaning the strategic, actually working on the business, because I wasn't burnt out. That's the distinction I draw. So the rest is just basically relaxed time, no expectations for anything. Give yourself the space. Yeah. That then naturally leads to the creativity of those new ideas coming through and thinking about what's next. You can't go from one to the other.
I love that distinction. So it might be like what you're describing with these three gears is almost like a polished version of it. So we can simplify it even more and say, hey, if you're executing all the time, maybe you're just the one gear, add that second gear in of like, just put a little bit of rest in there, knowing that, there's always a bit of fear in there. Maybe we could talk more about that. Like, what do you mean? Like, slow down? Why would I slow down? Like, don't we want to get stuff done here? Like, this is going back to episode like 1 here, right? With you can't work harder to get more results at a certain point. Like maybe in the beginning, right? You got to put your nose to the grindstone and get results and take action. But there's a reversing of the flow that's necessary at a certain point in that progress. Is that right? Is that how you'd say it?
We're about to start working with this awesome team of people, and before the end of the year is done here, I guess by the time this comes out, we're already a couple of calls in with these guys. And, one of the big things that we share with them is that, because the reaction is, I'm already busy. I haven't got time to do that. It's like, well, we know that you're really busy. This isn't about trying to jam 25 more things into the day. This is about doing the right things. And if you're always doing your foot down, you have to look forward, because otherwise you're going to crash. You can't stop and go, hang on, am I going down the right road? It's like you can't even look up at the signs, like, oh, get off here for a shortcut. It's like you can't do it because your foot's on the floor. It's like I can't look anywhere else apart from just keep going straight. I'm going to fast it. It's like, all right, but when's the check-in time? Like, what point do you go, hang on, like, is this really good? Like, get into the map and go, okay, hang on, am I heading where I want to be going here? I'm going somewhere, but is it where I want to be going? And what's different? And what do I know now? And half the time you don't even know what you know now because you haven't stopped to find out. But yeah, it's so compelling. It's addictive even. Going fast is great fun.
Yeah, there's a bit of that dopamine with like being needed, right? I'll go do this. Well, I'll go do this.
Yeah.
I'm done with this, so I'll go do this. And all of a sudden, you're in this cycle, and it's hard to get out unless you have somebody else to point out, like, hey, maybe this is not the best way to go about these things. You can actually get more results by going slower, which is that's the first time you've heard that. It's a radical idea, but that's the purpose of our podcast here, is to share. This is what other people do, right? Think of the most successful people in the world, right? Elon Musk is such an easy target because he's got so many large companies that you think he goes from one thing to the next and to the next to the next. He does, to a certain point, but I bet he understands that importance of that reflection time to slow down and rest and recalibrate what he's doing, or else he would only have one thing, right? He's got all these different things that can only come from having space in his schedule. No doubt.
Yeah. And so let's extend it one more here, right? Because it is important at certain times to put your foot to the floor and go for it. But if before you do that, you've been in that period of reflection, you can set up that acceleration period with a safety net. I'm doing this until this point, and at that point, that's the check. And so you can be free to bury your foot in the floor and just absolutely go for it, knowing that you've got the safety in there that you're going to check in on yourself, right? Like your co-driver is going to say, hey, like, it's time to hit the red button, and that's okay. And then now, but we've sprinted in that moment, and we can go to the next place, right? Like,
that's such an important distinction to make, because I think quite often, especially with business owners or new business owners or anybody who's achieving a higher level of success, you're going into the unknown, right? You don't know what the next thing is. Even if you have an idea of what your actions could or would be, you've never experienced that before. So what you just mentioned about, like, we're creating that, like, you're getting out ahead of what's about to happen. So you're rigging that game to win, right? That's a term we use a lot. So I would like to maybe explore, like, how else we can describe that to come at it from a different perspective or angle for somebody that's heard that 5, 6, 7 times. But it's being intentional about what's coming, even if you've never been there before.
Yeah, that's great, Coach. Being intentional about what's coming, even if you've never been there before. I like that book, A Lion Tracker's Guide to Life, Boyd Varty. And the quote from, I think it was in the book, not from him, I don't think, but was, as a line tracker, I don't know where I'm going, but I know I'm going to get there. And it's a trust of knowing that, like, if you follow that path, you'll get to the result, but you don't actually quite know what it looks like, but you'll get there. So if you're listening to this at the end of the year, or indeed already in 2023, what does it actually practically look like? Well, let's just use the calendar year to help you put this together. So in your life and your business, whatever's most important, you can think about playing a game of the first quarter of the year. So you can have your plan for the year. And if you don't, you can't figure out what the plan is for the quarter. Let me be clear about that. And if you haven't got a plan for a year and don't know what that is, you figure out what your plan for 5 years is, or 10 years, and then go backwards, right? Because, go zoomed out if you can't figure it out. But once you know where you want to go for the year, you can figure out where you want to get for the quarter. And then part of that, like, if it's a goal that's significant enough and that's exciting enough and scary enough for you, you won't know exactly the things to do. So what you can say is, here's the game I'm going to play for Q1. I'm going to do these things, and I'm for this amount and this intensity, and I'm going to track and measure those things. And I'm going to have a game with a scoreboard, and I'm going to rig it so I know I can do the things that I said I can actually do in terms of actions. And at the end of that quarter, I'm going to see what the score is. That's what that looks like, right? That's the trust. Okay, if I do this enough intensity with enough volume, I'm going to get some results. I'm going to either get the results I expect, and I'm going to be a quarter into towards my goal, or I'm going to get some different results. Maybe I'm twice, and maybe I've already got my goal. Maybe I've got nowhere near it. Maybe I discovered something else. And now I don't even want my goal. But either way, that's the game to play. So you can get back to that car, put your foot to the floor, and just crank, because you've set out a game that you're going to play up to a certain time. And know that as you're like going along that like highway or whatever, there's going to be things that at times make you go, whoa, like, is this still good, right? But that's staying the course and go, like, this is when you're doing it up until. You're going to do it until you've got a quarter of a tank of gas left. That's what you said you were going to do, and keep going no matter what, because you won't get the result otherwise.
Love it. Yeah, love it. I started out this conversation with wanting something new, and I think we delivered on that. This rigging the game to win. So how, I mentioned about being intentional about something we haven't experienced yet. It might even be, playing a smaller version of the big things that we want. What you're saying is, like, in a given quarter, Q1, let's just simplify it into something so simple and actionable that I cannot fail. And we'll reassess. And if nothing else, I'll have this tons of momentum that's easier to shift just slightly than if I had taken no action or maybe scattered action along the way. This is very strategic action in one direction. And I'll either do more of that into Q2, or I'll make these slight adjustments and just ride this wave into the rest of the year.
Yeah, it's a great distinction, that scattered action, right? Because you could, let's just make it easy and say you take 100 actions. If there are 100 of an action in the same area, then you're going to get 100 time effect, and you start to get compound interest. But if there are 100 different areas, you're not going to see anything. You're not going to see the needle move at all, right? Because it's just too far all over the place. Like, you're not going to know. That's something that really catches people out. They think that they're doing the actions, but they're not precise and consistent enough in the given area. Just all over the place. Like, I'm doing stuff. And now we're back to the tyranny of the ocean. It's the same thing. Awesome stuff, Coach.
Yeah, bring us home. We want to grab a takeaway here?
Oh, all of it.
It's all a takeaway.
Yeah, it's all good for me. The energy thing is really important for me right now. Obviously, like, a lot of this is scratching my own itch. Is like where I am right now, and obviously what comes up, and I see from my clients as well. But this time of year is super important to go, okay, which gear am I in? Which gear do I need to be in? And am I ready to go play for the following year? Do I have my plan nailed out? Like, is it at least in my mind? I had a client last week, and I asked. He was already starting to do some reflections, some accomplishments for 2022, laying that out. And I said, "Look, what you've accomplished, man. Like, as we're talking about 2023 and where you want to go for this time next year." I said, take yourself back to this time last year, as you were thinking about beginning of 2022, being it was 21, and what was your thoughts for 22? And like, what's the difference? He said, I wasn't thinking about it. I just wasn't doing it. Literally night and day. Not literally, but night and day difference in where he was in his thinking. Just wasn't doing it before. It's a beautiful thing, Coach.
Yeah. Where our attention goes, our energy flows. Just thinking about it, just being that is the being intentional about somewhere he hasn't been before. So that's him in 2022. Love it. Coach, good talk. See you next time.
Appreciate you. See you.
All right.
Thank you for watching another episode of Truth Seekers. We appreciate your interaction. So please comment, like, subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more, check out some of our links. Links to our masterclass, The Achiever's Mindset, and come join our LinkedIn group. And what do you want to see more of? Remember, we're here to share the simple secrets of successful. So help us do that. What do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? Thanks. I'll see you again next time.